Hello, and welcome to the first edition of Greenseeing. Now that some time has passed since last season, I felt it was a good time to begin our channel. And the very best way to begin is with a review of Season 6 of Game of Thrones, which, for many of us book readers, was always going to be a tough season as we moved into the Winds of Winter. In many ways, Season 5 and 6 felt very removed from the rest of the series. This season saw certain characters dying, others relocating, and the political landscape shifting to such a degree. All shows change and grow over time, but only the best ones keep what made them the best in the beginning. The audience, for the most part, is divided into two camps: those who watch the show for the violence, sex and dragons, and those who watch it for its complex narrative, full of political intrigue and scheming in a fantasy setting. And an argument could be made that neither of those were delivered upon this season. The violence in the show this season, with the exception of episode 9, was executed all wrong. We saw Arya and the Waif, two skilled swordswomen and assassins, fighting off-screen. Lady Crane's death was shown off-screen. The Blackfish, one of Westeros's most decorated fighters, killed off-screen. And Brienne and Podrick crossed a quarter of the Seven Kingdoms in a single episode, while fighting no one, all while passing two armies in the middle of a war. And in some cases, the violence could only be called cartoonish, such as the deaths of Walder Frey, Doran Martell, Tristan Martell and Areo Hotah. And we even saw comic book level heroism from Arya. It seemed that this season, rather than to advance the plot as we had seen before, that the violence was used both to shock and appall and to get a reaction from the viewers, as well as giving the audience something to cheer for, which we saw with the deaths of unlikable characters such as Ramsay and the High Sparrow. It must be said that we do not know where the storylines began in this season will end, and they should be judged after the fact. Last season spent a lot of time setting up Dorne and Doran Martell, so imagine next season if the first scene of episode 1, Euron Greyjoy dies anticlimactically. That is going to decrease the value of Season 6 for building a character for no proper reason. And it is hard, in many storylines, to see any progression between the end of Season 5 to the end of Season 6. In many ways, this season was lacking in character development. The majority of the main cast spent at least 9 episodes in the same place they were last season. Prior to episode 10, Tyrion, Jon, Arya, Sansa, Dany, Jorah, Brienne, Jaime, Cersei, and much more of the supporting cast had done nothing to change the direction of their character or advance themselves in the plot. And while episode 10 did untie many of the knots in certain characters' arcs, it showed how much of the 9 previous episodes had been wasted developing schemes involving Tommen, Marjorie, and the High Sparrow, as they were all killed before impacting the story or revealing their motivations this season. Obviously, we're expecting the Winds of Winter to give us more from the King's Landing and Sparrow movement plots, so we can't quite judge how well utilised their characters were. And while it is necessary for shows with such a large cast to kill off characters, to make room for key characters to shine and do what they must do to complete their arc, Game of Thrones has become enamoured with their reputation for killing off characters. When you look at characters who have died in previous seasons, Ned Stark, Khal Drogo, Jeor Mormont, Robb Stark, Oberyn Martell, Tywin Lannister, they all died in order for the story to advance. But the mass execution of Deceptive Baelor served far more to shock the audience rather than to add to the plot. The Jon, Sansa, Littlefinger and Davos stories have been wrapped together, as have Dany, Tyrion, Dorne and the Reach plotlines. The only new plot we've been introduced to is the Hound's crusade with the Brotherhood Without Banners, which can't be judged now and has a lot to come next season. But this season ended with the Hound, Brienne and possibly Arya all in the Riverlands and moving north. So expect to see those plotlines wrapped together early next season. For many of us who love the books and have fallen in love with the show's presentation of George's source material, this season was always going to be a difficult one, with Dan and Dave having so much more creative control and the added pressure from audiences which comes with it. Even the biggest shows have budget constraints, and it was most evident this season with the quick and off-screen killing of direwolves, animals which are key to the plot and give a profound impact on their owner's character, as the show has already established. With the straight choice between 1-1 and Ghost at the Battle of the Bastards, they seem to have chosen the right course. But the mistreatment of the role of direwolves to the plot is not an action that Dan and Dave would want to take again in later seasons. This season also featured no episodes written by George himself, and so was lacking that infusion of the author's influence. This was a season to enjoy each episode while watching it for the first time, which I greatly did myself. And episode 9 was undoubtedly one of the better of the entire show, but for different reasons than we'd enjoyed the rest. Though I feel this season, which when looked back on, when the story is finished, is going to be seen as one of the weaker seasons.